Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Guys and Magazines. This is Hunter and Steven. Say what up, Steven.
What up, Steven?
We are back taking a look at another $100 upgrade to a Precon deck from Duskborn. This deck is Endless Punishment. That's right, we're taking a look at the Rakdos deck, but we're taking a look at it from a standpoint of Valgavoth, Harrower of Souls. If you guys wanted to check out the backup commander for this deck, the Lord of Pain, check the description. It's exclusive over on our Patreon. But Steven, this is Valgavoth. Talk to me about this commander and kind of what the deck wants to do.
Hurt people.
Okay.
Yeah, this deck is was pretty fun to look at. It's got two different directions. It's kind of wanting to go with basically the backup commander really caring about your opponent's casting spells, whereas Valgavoth really cares about pinging opponents on their turns. So Valgavoth, Harrower of Souls, is two, a black and a red for a 4/4 legendary creature Elder Demon with flying and ward, pay 2 life. It also says whenever an opponent loses life for the first time during each of their turns, which is very important, put a +1/+1 counter on Valgavoth, Harrow of Souls, and draw a card. So we kind of really leaned into the ping aspect of this deck. And then just kind of like a little bit of protection, which is really funny. Almost Staxy and Rakdos, which was kind of weird to build, but I did it.
Rakdos left to deal damage. Nice to see a card in Rakdos deal damage and draw cards. Seems like it needed that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you though, out of all the artwork for all the commanders and even the backup commanders, this
Mhm.
is the sickest for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty cool. But Steven, let's not keep people waiting. Let's go ahead and jump straight into the additions for this $100 build. It looks like you have a Planeswalker start us off. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, so Hunter, I remember we played a game a long time ago and you put this Planeswalker in and it sucked. And I was like, man, it's perfect for this deck. So Chandra Awakened Inferno is 4 and 2 red for a legendary Planeswalker Chandra. Starts off at 6 loyalty. Uh, really the only thing we care about is the +2 here. Well, this spell can't be countered, number one, and then number two, that +2 is each opponent gets an emblem with at the beginning of your upkeep. This emblem deals 1 damage to you. Uh, so perfect for this deck. I mean, in all honesty, this is fantastic. Pings people on their turn, triggers Valgavoth, and then once you do hit that +2, you're at 8, and you probably have some protection for it, so that you can just do it again the next turn. Uh, it's just gonna get out of hand pretty quickly. There are two other modes, which I guess we kind of care about, maybe, probably not. The -3, Chandra Awakened Inferno deals 3 damage to each non-elemental creature. It also has a -X, where it says Chandra Awakened Inferno deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker. If a permanent dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. So the -3 could be a really fun little board wipe, because obviously non-elemental creatures is a lot.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, honestly, the +2 is really all I care about here.
Yeah, that +2 is so mean. Just an emblem. There's literally no way in Magic yet to get rid of emblems. So here we are, giving emblems that deal damage to people, triggering your commander, giving it counters, making you draw cards. It's really good in this deck. But moving on, I see 3 creatures you're throwing in. Talk to me about these ones.
Yeah, so I did want to add at least one new card from the set, and in this deck in particular, it made perfect sense. So Razorkin Needlehead is up first with 2 red for a creature human assassin. That's a 2/2. It has first strike as long as it's your turn, and then whenever an opponent draws a card, it deals 1 damage to them. So again, perfect for Valgavoth. We care about dealing that damage to them on their turn. It's very particular on Valgavoth, and I kind of hate that that little safety valve is there. But it is makes perfect sense, to be quite honest with you. But Razorkin is insanely great for this.
Yeah, it's it is really good. I mean, it's gonna ping people for a lot. If any kind of deck is trying to run just like a bunch of card draw, they're gonna pay the punishment if it sticks around.
Yeah, I heard you got card draw going on in your deck.
Maybe Simic tends to do that.
This deck's gonna hurt you. I'm telling you right
I
now.
probably will.
Next up, we have Creeping Bloodsucker. This is 1 and a black for a 1/2 creature vampire. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, Creeping Bloodsucker deals 1 damage to each opponent. You gain life equal to the damage dealt that way. So obviously, it's not affecting our opponents on their turn, so it won't really trigger Valgavoth. But I can guarantee you one thing: the constant pinging is going to get very annoying very quickly. This comes down very fast, being that 2 mana. I just love this card, and I usually include it in a lot of my black decks.
Mm-hmm. I like this card as well.
And the last creature I'm throwing in here is Crypt Gas for 3 and a black. It's a 2/2 creature spirit, has extort. So whenever you cast a spell, you may pay a white or a black. If you do, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain that much life. It also says whenever you tap a swamp for mana, add black to your mana pool. This deck is kind of mana intensive, and there's really not a lot of treasure theme in this deck. So Crypt Gas being in here is going to help us make sure that we're able to cast whatever we want.
Yeah, Cryptcast is always a fun one. That extort cost, you're going to be gaining that life too.
Super important to note that the white pip in that extort does not affect the legality of this deck whatsoever.
Yep, it's reminder text. But moving on, I see 2 artifacts that you're throwing into this deck to make it better. What are these?
Yep, so 2 of my favorite artifacts. One that I recently just found out that is super cool. So Copper Tablet is 2 mana. It says Copper Tablet does 1 damage to each player during his or her upkeep. Again, perfect for this deck. Just to be able to play this for 2 mana, and it just pings your opponents at each of their upkeeps, triggers our commander, and even if our commander's not there, just being able to deal 1 damage constantly, just reminding your opponents, I'm here.
I'm here. Ping, bing, bing.
Also, for 2 mana, we have Mind Crank. Whenever an opponent loses life, that player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So obviously, we're dealing damage. We care about pinging people. Mind Crank's going to help us out and hopefully take all your good cards, and instead of putting them in your hand, put them in your graveyard.
Ah, yes, the mill player has to find a way to put the mill card in the deck, right, Steven?
Absolutely. I love this card too because it only affects opponents, which is fantastic. Nothing like Mesmeric Orb, cough, cough, that affects everybody. Um, Mind Crank's just fantastic too because if somebody swings at someone and they want to get some retaliation, you didn't have to worry about it. They're swinging in for a bunch of damage. The other person's milling. It's almost just like sitting down and eating a bucket of popcorn and watching a movie.
Almost, right? Uh, Moving on, I see 3 new enchantments that you're throwing in.
Yeah, so like I said earlier in the video, I did go a little stacksy, and in that regard, these first 2 cards, I added Price of Glory, which is 2 in a red for an enchantment that says whenever a player taps a land for mana during another player's turn, destroy that land. Nothing annoys me more than when I go to attack with a super big commander and somebody tries to, exile it with like a swords or a path, and I just don't like that. So if you do want to do that, feel free. Just make sure that land's not there after you're done.
Is that Staxy or is that just cruel? Because you're just going to blow up someone's land? That's
I
mean.
mean, listen, man, it's endless punishment.
That is definitely fits on theme, that's for sure.
I also added Smoke, which is 2 red for an enchantment. It says each player can only untap 1 creature during his or her untap phase. Essentially, with us being the deck that we are and the way that I've built it, I know I'm going to get hit a lot. So I just want to make sure that if I do get hit, it's with 1 creature. Hopefully.
Hmm. You don't want that smoke.
Damn. I didn't actually think about that. That's actually solid. And then the last enchantment I'm adding here is going to be Roiling Vortex. This is 1 in a red. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, it deals 1 damage to them, and then whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast that spell, Roiling Vortex deals 5 damage to that player. You can also pay a red. Your opponents can't gain life this turn. I love this static ability on here for just paying a red. Opponents can't gain life. If you just have that 1 red up, somebody's swinging in with a lifelink creature, or they play a spell where they're getting a bunch of life, this just nips it in the bud really, really quickly. Also, again, 2 mana, just being able to ping somebody for 1, it's adding up. It's adding up. So I love it.
It definitely adds up very quickly if you got multiple of these effects on the field at once. The ping is real.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be endless punishment. And finally, I see you've touched the land base a bit. Go ahead and rattle me off these new lands.
I touched the land base quite a bit, actually. I think this is the first time I've actually added this many lands to a deck. Um, the deck had a bunch of the pieces that were already needed for ping and just hurting people, and I thought the deck ran pretty smoothly. I kind of wanted to save my budget primarily for the $300 upgrade. For the $100, I just wanted to add some really good lands. So Blazemire Verge taps for a black, so this is one of the new Duskborn ones. You can also tap it for a red. You can only activate this if you control a swamp or a mountain. Haunted Ridge is since there's the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. There's a land in here that I got rid of, and I'll explain a little bit later. I think this is the better of the two. Luxury Suite, you can't have a commander deck without a bond land, so I threw in our color scheme here. So Luxury Suite enters the battlefield tapped unless you have two or more opponents. Shocker, we are playing commander, so we will have three opponents, hopefully, unless we're doing our job really well. Then we might only have one. But this will tap for a black or a red. And then I added a fun one. I actually have never added this card to a deck. I added Mount Doom. So it does kind of shock you a little bit. So you can tap it, pay one life, add a black or a red. You can also pay one, a black and a red, tap it. It deals one damage to each opponent. And then you can pay five, a black and a red, sack it, and a legendary artifact. Choose up to two creatures, then destroy the rest. Activate only as a sorcery. So a bunch of different modes on here. I love Mount Doom just because for 3 on somebody's turn, if we're not really doing anything with our mana, we can go ahead and ping, grow Valgavoth, draw a card. It's a fun one for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I did add Raucous Theater, the Surveil land. I think Surveil lands have been super, super awesome, especially coming into Commander. I did try to get rid of a lot of the tap lands and like some of the other weird filter ones, but I feel like if you're gonna have a tap land, you might as well kind of like scry or be able to kind of pitch it into the graveyard. So Raucous Theater is here. And then these next two, I hear there's some graveyard shenanigans going on with all of your decks. So I did add Scavenger Grounds. This is a land desert. You can tap it for a colorless, or you can pay 2, sack it, exile all graveyards. And if that's not enough, I also added Bajuka Bog. It enters tap, but when it enters, exile target player's graveyard. I just want to make sure we're playing a fair game. That's all.
Oh, that's all. I'm the Manifest Dread deck, so my graveyard is going to be filling up. I know uh, David has the Delirium deck, so their graveyard is going to be filling up. Yeah, I don't like that.
No, no, I don't think anybody will like it. That's also why I kind of added a little bit of Staxiness in this deck, which is weird for Rakdos. I didn't really think that was possible.
So weird. Is that going to do it, though? Is that all of the additions for this $100 upgrade?
Those were all the additions. I wanted to keep it simple, sweet. I feel like most of the time I'm putting in a bunch of like, different things. This time I kind of did the same thing where I did add about 16 cards, but of the 16, 7 of them were lands. So I kind of wanted to keep it a little bit simple and sweet here.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I like it. Let's go ahead and move on to the cuts. I see, starting with some creatures we're getting rid of.
Yeah, so getting into the creatures, I got rid of Braid's Arisen Nightmare. I think this was a pretty weird include in this deck. This deck doesn't really reward you for your stuff dying, and there's not really a reanimator theme. So Braids, 1, 2 black, 3/3 legendary creature Nightmare. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. Obviously, the card draw is really nice, but Valgavoth cares about damage being dealt on their turn, not ours. So it's just kind of a weird include. Next up, Fear of Burning Alive. 4 and 2 red for an enchantment creature Nightmare. That's a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to each opponent. It also has Delirium. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, Fear of Burning Alive deals that amount of damage to target creature that player controls. This card's fun, and I kind of get why it's in the deck, especially with like Lord of Pain. Uh, but I'll be honest with you, for it to deal 4 damage to each opponent, paying 6 mana, it's just super expensive. I kind of like to keep my decks low to the ground to a certain extent. It was a little hard in this deck just because everything was kind of expensive, but this was a pretty easy cut for me. Next up in this little set, we have Karavek the Merciless. This is 5, a black and a red. It's a legendary creature, human shaman. It's a 5/4. And then whenever an opponent casts a spell, it deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to any target. Fun, really cool. Obviously, I feel like this is more for the Lord of Pain than anything. I do understand that this will trigger Valgavoth, but again, 7 mana is so aggressive. So aggressive.
Yeah, it is aggressive. All three of these are kind of aggressive. It's interesting that some of these cards just don't trigger your commander because it's not on their turn. But I can see why you're making these cuts. They just don't fit in the deck anymore.
Yep, and then these last 3. So first up, we have Tectonic Giant. This is 2 and 2 red. I feel like I cut this out of any deck Precon that it comes in. I just don't really enjoy this card. It is a 3/4 creature elemental giant, and then whenever it attacks or becomes a target of a spell an opponent controls, choose one. It deals 3 damage to each opponent, and then you can also exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them until the end of your next turn. You may play that card. I know it's got a lot of upside, and I understand it is dealing damage to each opponent. I feel like anytime I play this, nobody targets it. So I always have to attack with it, and I understand it's a 3/4, but I feel like it just always dies. I don't get it. Next up on the chopping block, Vile Smasher the Fierce. It is 1 a black and a red for a 2/3 legendary creature, Goblin Berserker. Whenever you cast your first spell each turn, choose an opponent at random. Vile Smasher the Fierce deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to that player or planeswalker that player controls. It also has partner, not relevant here. Again, not really for our commander for the face. For the backup, excellent. So that's gone. And then the last card I cut, I know I might get some slack and I understand it. I just usually always cut the backup commander or the face commander depending on the deck that I'm doing. So the Lord of Pain is gone. 3 a black and a red for a 5/5 legendary creature human assassin with menace. Your opponents can't gain life. And then whenever a player casts their first spell each turn, choose another target player. The Lord of Pain deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to the chosen player. Uh, I get it. I like it. It's cool. Had to make a cut. This was expensive. I kind of wanted to keep it low to the ground.
Yeah, once again, I understand all these cuts. I mean, the Lord of Pain, it does deal damage to your opponents, but it's not doing damage to the opponent that cast the spell, right? You have to choose a different player, which means it's not dealing damage to help your face commander. So
Mm-hmm.
I can see why you're cutting all these out. You've added other effects that ping and deal damage to your opponents on their actual turn, utilizing more of your face commander. So these 3, I get it. Moving on, I do see one artifact you are removing.
Yep, so I got rid of Mask of Gristlebrand. This is 1 and 2 black for legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature has flying and lifelink, and then whenever equipped creature dies, you may pay X life, where X is its power. If you do, draw X cards. This card is great. Again, this deck is very mana intensive, and there's a lot of things we want to do with our mana, and I think 6 mana is a bit aggressive. 3 to cast, and then 3 to equipped. I didn't really think the deck needed it, so I just chucked it into the bin.
Just extra card draw. Card draw stable in your commander. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And a brand new mechanic to the set is a room. You are removing it. Talk to me about this one.
Yeah, so this is the only room in the deck, and I did cut it, so I felt a little bad doing it, but here we are. So this is an enchantment room. This is Spiked Corridor on the left side. This is 3 and a red. It says when you unlock this door, create 3 1/1 red devil creature tokens with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. And then when you unlock that door, it goes over to Torture Pit, which is also 3 and a red. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. Great card, not for this kind of style deck. I understand with the devils, you could, jump block, deal the damage to the one person, and put a +1/+1 counter, and then draw a card. I just, again, with the deck wanting to do the ping and hurting people other ways, 8 mana wasn't really my go-to.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't fit in the build you're doing. Take it out. Easy,
Gone.
easy to get rid of. And finally, we did see you touch all of those lands. You added a whole bunch more than you're used to. I assume you took out more.
Yeah, I added 7 lands. I actually took out 8, so I only took out 1 extra one this time. I got a little scared. I didn't want to go too down in the dumps with the lands. But pretty much, if it said it came in tapped, I got rid of it. I understand that you kind of want to go search for cards with like Swamp or Mountain, but we're not ramping in that extent, so I didn't really care if it had that land type. But we'll go ahead and get into it. So Black Cleave Cliffs, it enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. This was the mention I had earlier on that other land that I added. I feel like anytime I play this game, I always draw this after I have more lands. So I just got rid of it. It pisses me off every time, and I think that's why it triggers me so much. Temple of Malice, I added the Surveil, so I got rid of the Scry one. Geothermal Bog enters tapped. It's gone. Canyon Slough enters tapped. It does have Cycling, which is nice, but it's gone. And then Shadowblood Ridge, I also got rid of that. The Filter Lands and Math and me never really got along. And then I got rid of the Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds, basically both the same thing. You're sacking them, searching for a basic land. And then Ash Barrens does tap for a colorless and has basic land cycling one. This is kind of one that I usually like to keep around, which I know is kind of weird for a pre-con deck. I know normally a lot of people like to cut these, but I think just being able to play something and just kind of land cycle just to guarantee that you have that land next turn is always nice too. But I put in Scavenger Grounds and Bajuka Bog last second, and I just need to make one other cut. So here we are.
Yeah, I get it. All these cards, most of them, then the colors, they tap, they come in tapped. And then Terramorphic Evolving Wilds, you're a 2-color deck. You're gonna hit your land. You're gonna hit your colors, so you don't need those. And then Ash Barrens, it's just bad. Boring.
It's not terrible.
It's bad and boring. But is that going to do it, Steven? Is that all of your additions and all of your cuts for this $100 upgrade to Endless Punishment?
That is going to do it.
All right.
Punishment will be given.
All right. Well, talked about the punishment to the wallet. We've given you $100. What was the total amount of money you spent on all these additions?
Yeah, so it was just a touch over $100. I think it was like $101.50. I'm pretty sure that's just because of the pre-order prices. I'm pretty sure prices will go down. So I guarantee you in a couple days, maybe a week, we'll be right under it.
Yeah, makes sense. That Razorkin will probably drop quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But you got any final thoughts on good old Valgavoth before we wrap things up, Steven?
I mean, I think it's super fun. I love the effect of it where it's just kind of like you're just hurting your opponents for doing normal things, card draw, just playing lands. I mean, it's really fun. I think this deck is a little bit of a hate generator for sure. I think people are going to come at you pretty hard. So it's just kind of one of those ways where if you build it, just know that that's going to happen to you. But I'm okay with that. I love it. I want to fight through it and win. So I'm here for it.
I'm here for it too. It really does terrify me though. So please don't hurt me.
I will.
But if you guys like that video, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay up to date. We got a $300 upgrade coming after this video's out. So stick around. Also, check out all the other upgrades that we've done. In the description, you will find links to our Twitter, our TikTok, our Instagram, @guys@magic for each one. Check the links in the description for those. If you guys wanted to leave a comment down below letting Steven know what you thought of all of his upgrades. Did you agree with them? Maybe you disagreed with them. Something that he missed? Let him know. Comment down below. If you guys wanted to play test this deck, check the link in the description for the Moxfield account. All the deck is there. And on the screen right now, those are all our Patreon subscribers. If you guys want to check out what they're seeing, which is not here on YouTube, including the backup commander, the Lord of Pain. If you wanted to see that upgrade, it's over exclusive on our Patreon. Check the link in the description and consider subscribing. And until the next video, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.
Hey, you have a guys that magic day.